Hello and welcome, dear students. Today we are going to talk about the consolidation of Brahmanical tradition, in which we will be looking about the Varna Ashram Dharma. The learning objectives of this lecture are to understand the concept of Varna Ashram Dharma, to know about the 4 stages of ashram, to understand the social psychology of the ashram stage in life. First, let's talk about the Varna Ashram. The Varna Ashram refers to institutionalization of social stratification on the basis of Varna and 4 stages of life. It is reflection of personal duties and social responsibilities. The literal meaning of Varna was color, which over the period time solidified with the caste system. Varna Ashram was seen as ideal division of labor in different stages of individual's life. The importance of fulfilling different stages of Varna Ashram Dharma is emphasized by Bhagavad Gita. The ashrama schemes divided human life in 4 stages, namely Brahmacharya, that's a stage of training and learning; Grahastha, that's a householder enjoying married life; Vanaprastha, that's a stage of meditation and partial retirement from active household life; and Sannyasa, that's a period of renunciation. L. Bhasham, in his work The Wonder That Was India, writes, "This scheme of course represents the ideal rather than real. The stage of life could not be followed, and neither all hermits of ancient India were old men and had either shortened or omitted the stage of householder. It evolved as a counterblast against non-conformist traditions of Buddhism and Jainism that expected young men to accept asceticism at young stage. The divisional structure of Indian society is intertwined with 4 orders or ashramas of life. It gives rise to Varna Ashram Dharma. The Purusha Shuktam hymn of Rigved, contained in 10th Mandal, which is later addition, confirms to 4 orders of society emanating from the sacrifice of the primeval being. The Brahman has originated from head, Kshatriya from arms, Vaishya from thighs, and Shudra from feet of the Supreme Being. 3 classes of society named as Brahman, Kshatriya, and Vaishya are frequently mentioned in Rigved. Brahman represented the priest class, the Kshatriya represented the class of warrior chiefs, and the Vaishyas was a class of producers comprising common people. The Brahmans, being a creation from head, have to learn and teach Vedas and to perform yajnas or sacrifices, for which they received dakshina or gifts. The Rajanayas, creation entitled them to fight wars and to protect the people. The Vaishyas were for practicing agriculture, cattle rearing, and engaging in trade, paying taxes. The Shudras, being creation from feet, has to serve the upper 3 castes. The purpose of the 4-fold division of society according to Manu Smriti was to preserve the universe. Brahma, the creator, assigned duties to different castes on the basis of their creation, but it was for quality work rather than body-based restricted scope of work to each group. Bhagavad Gita speaks of flexible character of 4-fold division. The divine origin theory says that the 4-fold division was to serve the society, but the coming of Kali Yuga saw the emergence of different subcastes, with one at loggerheads with the other, and the 4-fold division of society, which was flexible earlier, became rigid. The Varna system was considerably modified owing to the proliferation of the castes in the later period. Manusmriti mentions 61 castes, and a post-Gupta Puranic text mentions 100 castes. The Brahmanas of later Vedic period were divided into exogamous septs or Gotras, a system which was copied in part by other classes which have survived to the present day. Later Brahmins formed many subcastes which linked together by common practices. Brahmins often lived under the patronage of kings or the chief and was provided for grants of tax-free land. The Purohit enjoyed respectable position in the court. In due course of time, not all Brahmins performed religious duties. Many were employed in important government posts and several royal families were of Brahman origin. Brahmins also took up trade and agriculture. The Brahmins of secular occupation were not probably enjoying the respect than that of those Brahmins who lived on sacrifice and teaching. Charudatta, a poor Brahman of the play The Little Clay Cart, receives severe punishment at the hands of the court. Probably he is Brahman of birth only and not by profession. The Kshatriya caste swelled due to influx of Hunnas and Gujars, who joined their ranks as Rajputs. The guilds of craftsmen were also transformed into castes that led to increase in Vaishya caste. The absorption of forest tribes into the settled Varna society led to the increase in Shudra castes. The Varna system did not always function smoothly. The idea of stages of life was more artificial. Just like the Aryan society was divided into 4 castes, similar way the life of an individual was divided into 4 stages. This first stage begins with the investure ceremony, when the boy, while leaving his childhood behind and becomes a brahmacharin, lives a celibate and austere life as a student at the home of teacher. In the next stage, he gets married and becomes a household or doing the grihastha. The third stage reaches in his advanced middle age, when he starts meditation and penance to free his soul from material things, becomes a hermit and enters a stage called vanaprastha. At the very old age, he becomes homeless wanderer or sannyasi. This scheme is ideal than real. It was quite difficult in practical terms to follow all these stages of life. All hermits in ancient India had not followed all then ashramas of life. Neither all sannyasis were old men. It was simply idealization of facts. It has emerged as response posed by the unorthodox sects like Buddhism and Jainism, which encouraged young men to adopt asceticism and bypass family life altogether. Nevertheless, the 4 stages of life were an ideal which many men attempted to follow in ancient India. Besides, these ashramas of life evolved a framework around which life of an individual can be modeled. Now let's understand the social psychology of 4 ashramas. The Hindu Shastrakars or Shastra writers viewed man as a social being with reference to 4 main factors on his life and behavior. He is considered in relation to Desh, place, which is the regional approach to the study of society; Kala, that's time, which is the historical approach to the study of society; Shrama, that's effort, which considers his upbringing and development in his environment; and Guna, natural traits, which refers to the natural and inherent psychological environment of a man. For a proper understanding of ashramas, it is important that we investigate the doctrine of the Purusha Arthas, which are Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. These are the psycho-moral foundations of ashrama philosophy. There are 2 explanations for this. Through the ashramas, the person learns a psychological theory in the form of instructions on the use and maintenance of the Purusha Artha. In practice, he must interact with society in line with these lessons. The concepts Dharma, Arth, Kam and Moksha are typically translated into English as morality, wealth, desire or passion and salvation respectively. However, English nouns are frequently free of Sanskrit overtones. Let us now address the idea and practice of ashrama in its proper context. The origin of the word ashrama is the Sanskrit root shrama, which means to exert oneself. Thus, it may refer to first, a location where exertion is undertaken and the act of performing such exertions. An ashrama is literally a halting or resting place. Thus, the term denotes a pause, a standstill, or stage in the journey of life for the sole purpose of rest, in a sense, in order to prepare for the next journey. Consequently, ashramas are viewed as resting on working stations along the path to liberation, which is the ultimate goal of life. According to Vyas, in the Mahabharata, the four stages of existence constituted a ladder or flight or four steps, and this flight is connected to Brahma. By ascending this flight, one reaches the Brahma region. There are four ashramas, that's Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa. This stage of education was called as a Brahmacharya ashrama. In ancient times, a student was required to live with his teacher and, through discourse, understanding the teachings, concepts. After the Brahmacharya period ended, the student was required to immerse himself in water before returning back to home with the teacher's consent to begin the next phase of his life, that's Grihastha. Due to the immersion in water, the pupil was given the name Snatak, which means one who has bathed in the water of learning. Therefore, following graduation, a student is admitted to a particular degree during a convocation and is expected to prove deserving of the same. This indicates that the student must demonstrate his or her worthiness for the degree or diploma in later life. In ancient times, the education a Sthanik received from his instructor was aptly described as both the teacher and the student prayed to Brahma, "Please protect us both and provide us with equal educational benefits." Let us each acquire the capacity for learning. May the learning efforts of both of us be fruitful. Let us not envy one another. But education was not available to everyone. Dear students, let's now talk about the Grihastha ashrama. Upon returning home, the Grihastha system would be operated. The Brahmachari must now establish his family. Thus, marriage became obligatory. Marriage is actually a social institution that includes the family, or the family is a social institution that includes marriage. Now begins Grihastha ashram, the life of the house owner. As a social institution, Western Marek defines marriage as a relationship between one or more men and one or more women that is characterized or recognized by custom or law and entails particular rights and responsibilities for both the persons joining the union and the offspring born out of it. Such a definition of marriage suggests that its meaning also encompasses features of the family. Thus, when Western Marek asserts that marriage is more than a regulated sexual behavior and that it is an economic institution that may in various ways affect the proprietary rights of the party, he is referring to issues associated with the structure and function of the family as opposed to marriage itself. All of these factors are equally applicable to the Hindu marriage tradition, that's Vivaha. According to Manu, to be mothers were women created and to be fathers men. Therefore, the Vedas ordained that dharma must be practiced by men together with his wife. Vivaha is one of the Sharira Samaskara or body sanctifying sacraments that every man and woman must undergo at the appropriate age and time. According to Manu, it is a social organization that regulates proper relations between the sexes. It is challenging to properly and concisely define the institution of the family. As a social institution, the family has evolved to meet certain fundamental biological, psychological and social requirements of men. The basic rules are: first, the stable satisfying of the sexual and psychosomatic needs of men and women; second, procreation, care and nurture of the young, and the sharing of living space. The three functions are so intertwined that each one supports and enhances the other's satisfactions. Dear students, let's now talk about the Vanaprastha ashram. Although there are 4 levels of training, including the hermit and the sannyasi, the Chanda Yoga Upanishad illuminates the 4th level on the ground that it takes place outside the ashrams. The life of the householder is very essential. In the 3rd ashram, preparations are made for the last yajna, which is intended to be performed in the final ashrama to be completed. The individual now gives up his fields of artha and kama by quitting his nearest and dearest, his family, that's kula, his village, that's grama, and his possessions and property. He now enters the forest bana for meditation and service to others and to prepare for the performance of the final yajna of the sannyasa ashram, the final ashram. Dear students, let's now talk about the sannyas. In terms of the final yajna, the last ashrama provides the greatest possibility for self-expression and self-expansion. Sannyas signifies a total self-offering, atmahuti, for the realization of the true spirit of life and its completion. Then the self gives up all that was dearest to its lover ego in order to enable itself to become one with the real self, that's the Paramatma, subsequently. The individual becomes a Yajni Bhakt through sannyas. He has endured education and discipline from stage to stage, ashrama to ashrama, realizing more and more that neither he nor this samsara, the apparent world where the ego loves all aspirations and seeks pleasure, belong to him. In the final stage, he fully comprehends the position and significance of the self in the midst of samsara and meets moksha, the ultimate goal of all existence. As can be seen from the foregoing discussion, the ashramas are viewed as schools of life at various periods of human existence, designed and organized such that the individual has the greatest chance of achieving moksha. During these distinct life phases, the functions of the group and the individual are distinct and different in relation to one another. In the first ashrama, the person's purpose is to care for the individual. As far as the individual is concerned, however, it's an interaction phase. In the second ashrama, the individual is responsible for the group. He is the owner and manager of social property and social norms. The organization is interested in providing him with and eliciting from him the greatest social, economic, physical and spiritual opportunities so that he can best fulfill these commitments. The third ashrama is generally neutral from the perspective of both the person and the collective. Here the individual must make attempt to submit to his spiritual responsibilities about the manifestation of self-strength. Eventually, he must apply the best teaching learned in the Brahmacharya ashram, namely entering oneself and discovering the truth for oneself. At this stage, the sense of alienation from God begins to emerge. In the third and fourth ashrams, the function of the individual is to deal with the hidden, the latent, the spiritual, the supernatural, and life inside, while the function of the group steadily diminishes until it is nearly non-existent in the fourth ashram. In the final stage, the individual liberated from all obligations must aid himself in the pursuit of true self-knowledge and being. During the early Vedic period in Indian history, the 4 stages of life have not been equally significant to man and woman. Low castes were prohibited from appreciating and practicing the varied grades of work delineated by various ashramas. The ashramas were reserved solely for Brahmins, but Kshatriyas who had completed their duties in defense and administration might also enter the final 2 stages. But training through the first stage was mandatory for the son of the king. Therefore, ashramas were not universal social institutions. They were almost exclusively reserved for the socio-religious elite of the high caste Hindus. Dear students, to conclude this lecture, we can say that Varna Ashram Dharma emerged as a response to the challenge posed by Upanishads, Buddhism and Jainism. However, the scheme was ideal, not real. It was quite difficult in practical terms to follow these stages of life. Nevertheless, the four stages of life were an ideal which many men attempted to follow in ancient India. Besides, these ashrams of life evolved a framework around which life of an individual can be modeled. Dear students, that was all about today's lecture regarding consolidation of Brahmanical tradition with focus on Varna Ashram Dharma. Hope you have understood it well. We shall meet again with a new topic. Till then, take care of yourself and goodbye.